and my life was plummeting. In 1993, at the age of 33 years old, I couldn't do this thing called life anymore.
Hello, family. Welcome back to the Explore the Extraordinary podcast. My name's Betty, and today I'm joined by Bryan. Bryan's a near-death experiencer, a musician, a healer, and a little crazy. I'm super excited for your willingness to come on and serve our community at IANDS, Bryan. So I'm going to toss it right over to you.
Thank you so much. So I appreciate you, Betty, letting me come and do this. It was this is quite an experience. I don't really get to talk much about my near-death experience, which happened 31 years ago. The discovery of IANDS has given me a great insight and the ability to be able to talk about what happened to me. And the research that the community is doing has given me confidence in telling you what I'm going to tell you. It's funny, I was looking at the name of your podcast, and I had to go look up extraordinary. I have my own definition, but I have a 1939 Webster dictionary, and it said out of common course, rare, extra, and beyond ordinary. The other thing it said was, as it applies to me, extraordinary evils require extraordinary remedies. My experience is a dark experience. It is not the light, go to Jesus and everything's wonderful and friends and family welcome and you don't want to come back to earth. Mine was, what I'm discovering was the complete opposite. And so there are other near-death experiences that I've heard that are dark or hellish, or I forget what IANDS would call them. Anyway, so our experiences in our dark experiences are as different as our fingerprints sometimes. The explanation I'll give you of mine is the best that I can do with trying to put words into what happens in the spirit. And the best way that I can explain that is it's much like trying to explain the color red to a person who has been blind from birth. It's very difficult for me even still to put into words what happened in my spirit. But I'll do the best I can. My experience, of course, is dark. And so I want to give you a little bit of a history. I think last year when I went to Washington, D.C., there was a question of how is it possible that a loving God could create a hell, a place that is dark? And that question, I sat with that question for the year, and the best explanation I can come up with is I don't think God is finished creating yet. In Genesis, it says that God created the heavens and the earth, and it was without void. I don't think he's finished creating. There is a void, and it is a place that I was at, and it was not light. It was not happy. There was no joy. There was no freedom. There were no friends, and there was no hope, and I didn't care. That's the sad thing about my experience. So let me take you a little bit. It's kind of difficult to tell a life story in about 15 minutes. I could tell you about the experience. It wouldn't take long to tell about the experience itself, but let me tell you what led up to that. So I was at about four years old. I knew I could hear the voice of God. I knew who he was. It was the still small voice. And I had no doubt about who he was. My mother used to, she would put on these 45 records and play those for me. I think that was a way of just giving me something to do while she was cleaning the house or cooking, whatever. And so at about 4 years old, she would put these records on, and we had a record player that she could stack 45s on, and once it played the record, it would release the record. So, but what I discovered later on is what she was playing for me was Tennessee Ernie Ford, and a recording that had been made with the Jordanaires, and they were all these gospel songs that I heard. And it's funny, just a few years ago, I discovered that the 4-year-old self, I learned the bass part, which is what Tennessee Ernie Ford was singing. And anyway, the words of the songs have become even more apparent to me about, I was given instructions at the time about what I was supposed to be doing now. And so through my life, I was raised by a couple, my mother and my dad. My mother was, she had her own troubles, and my dad did too. My dad was a song leader in a church, and so that makes me a preacher's kid, and that makes this even worse. So I heard, we were at church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and every Wednesday night, and I heard everything you're supposed to hear. What I've discovered is that my understanding of God had become corrupted. And this was such a strict organization of a religion that they were actually giving me instructions about what it was going to be like to be in hell. And they were right. So as my life went on, I began to just walk away from God. And then not only did I walk away, I began to run away. And I did not want to be a part of a God that was a punishing, vindictive, never forgetful type of power. And when I decided that God had it in for me, the best thing for me to do is, if I'm going to have to answer to everything that I am doing, I might as well just make the list as long as possible. And so I broke out of actually trying to find out who God was, and I started a run, and it was a runaway. And so at about 17 years old, I have a bluegrass band. We're doing pretty good, and I live in, at the time was living in the city of Montgomery, Alabama. And we were doing pretty good. We had gotten ourselves into a contest of about 400 or 500 bands, won the contest, and we were sent to Nashville. And in that, we were given the opportunity. We were actually invited to play on the Grand Ole Opry, and our opportunity vanished when the band ended up imploding. We couldn't get along with each other, and my run from God was at a steady pace at that point. There were things being taken away from my life, and I just didn't care. I'm not paying attention to who God is or what He is for me. If He's going to punish me, let's bring it. And so I'm pretty heavily drinking at this time, and I'm just trying to disappear. I'm just trying to be numb. I don't want to feel. I'm afraid. I don't know all this at the time, but I know that I'm running. And so my twisted understanding of who God is just got worse. Got married in 81, a sweet girl. Holy moly. What she had to put up with, I can't describe. We got married in 81. We had twin boys in 85. And my life was plummeting. And in 1993, at the age of 33 years old, I couldn't do this thing called life anymore. I called a friend of mine who had a hotel just outside of the city of Montgomery, and he let me come and stay in a 10 by 10 room that he had. And I entered myself into a treatment center for alcohol abuse. I was tricked into that because I had no intention of stopping drinking. But there was a counselor there. He said, you might want to look at trying to have 3 meals a day. And I thought, how do you do that? I mean, I'm on a liquid diet by this time. I don't care. And so they said, maybe you need to quit drinking for about 30 days. Let's see what happens. And then they really just double dog dared me. He said, I don't think you can do it. Well, don't ever tell me that I can't do something. I'll show you, buddy. And so it was a downward spiral. It was a free fall. And so I'm at a truck stop just down the road from where I was staying at this motel, and I'm having my pork chops and green beans. I don't like green beans, and you know, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to eat a good meal like they tell me, and I noticed that my vision was starting to close in. And I thought, oh, holy smoke, I'm going to go blind here. I better get in the car and get back to the hotel. And when I got back to the hotel, I walked in the room and I sat down and looked at myself in the mirror. And I looked into my eyes and there was no light. It was dark. It was the worst I had ever seen. I will never forget that. And I sat on the edge of the bed and I thought, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Um, I crawled into bed and I pulled the covers over my head and I said, I quit. And that's when the noise started. And there was this tremendous noise that sounded a lot like, I guess, what if I'd ever been close to a jet engine, that's what it sounded like. It was staticky. It was in sound terms, it was pink noise, white noise, gray noise, whatever you want to call it. It was like how the television used to sound when it would go off the air. It was just a loud hiss. It was all ranges of sound from the low to the high, and it was so loud. The sound was so loud, and it was so dark that I couldn't hear my own thoughts, and I don't care. And I knew pretty much where I was, but there's no way out of this because my training in religious training had taught me that when you're there, it's done. There's no getting out. But there was the counselor that told me that maybe I needed to start taking care of myself. He planted this thought and he said, at some point in your life, you're going to crawl out of bed and get on your knees and ask for help. I had nothing to lose. I crawled out of bed. I got on my knees and I said, God, I can't do this. And everything went quiet. It was total silence. And then I hear the voice again. And he says, go see Wayne. Wayne's the guy that owns a hotel. I got up off my knees. I walked into the office, and Wayne is sitting there in the office with a book in his lap. There's two chairs. There's one that he's sitting in and one next to him there in the lobby. And I sat down. I said, Wayne, the strangest thing has happened. And I looked over at what he was reading, and he had his dad's large print Bible open. And I looked over and the words jumped off the page. And I took the book from him and I said, I don't understand this. And Wayne says, just be quiet, fool, and read. And I read about where I had been, where I was at that moment, and I read about where I was headed. And my life has not been the same since. Since then, I have not had a drink since February the 22nd of 1993, and for that I am forever grateful. But the darkness that I remember I see people who are in that place. It's the Walking Dead. It's there's a death sentence, and they don't know there's a way out. And in my ability, when I came back from this experience, I learned through IANDS that I came back with an energy source of power that was pretty much just out there. I could see people that were in the dark, but I didn't. I was doing the best I could to shine the light as bright as I could that has been lit in me. So last year we had the opportunity to study Reiki, and I went through this a 6-hour course there with Becky to understand and how to practice Reiki. And Reiki has actually given me the ability to focus that much power and energy. And so that makes me a conduit. And I ask God for that power, and it passes through me and into the person that I'm with. And I'm actually discovering that over a period of time that I'm able to do that long distance on the phone, on Zoom, whatever, which is just unbelievable to me, extraordinary, if you would say. But to be able to do that in person, my goodness, I wish I could had time to tell you the stories about what happened to everybody I talked to in the healing sessions. But anyway, my life today is beyond explanation. I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I met somebody at the convention who had the complete opposite experience, where she was in love with God and wonderful things were happening. And then she had her NDE, and then she's trying to get back to that place where everything was okay. And her experience is complete opposite of the experience that I have had. And so we had some really good conversations there a couple of weeks ago there in Phoenix. So we're talking about trying to come up with some sort of a session where we can actually tell an audience how different the two experiences are. We're working on that. So anyway, lots of good things. My life has changed. I have hope today. I know who God is. I really love these light experiences that I hear, when people explain about going to heaven and what that's going to be like. And I experience that here on earth. And that is an incredible miracle for me, to that God actually would pluck me out of the darkest place that I have ever been, that I could ever explain. And so anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Was that 15 minutes? I don't know. That was anyway.
Thanks, Bryan. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. You know what I got? I'm also in recovery, and what I got out of it was the gift of desperation, the acronym for God, right? And sometimes for some of us, we choose that path where we got to be in the pit of despair to find that transformation. Of my experience as well. So thank you so much for your willingness to be open and share that. I'm wondering if maybe you have any advice if somebody is going through a dark time in their life. Is there a way for them to bypass that total end of desperation and just kind of get into a space of belief and hope?
Well, I can tell you from my experience, get on your knees. Even if you don't believe that God is there, he is, and ask for help, and then expect it. It will come. For me, it came. I could not have designed what happened to me, but I was so desperate. It's like you say, but that's where I had to go, and my understanding of who God is today is totally different from what it was at that time, and that's where it had to go. It was my misunderstanding. It wasn't God.
So can you tell me a little bit about your experience with kind of taking on the role of healer, thinking about how your life was 30 years ago compared to how it is today? What do you get out of being able to assist other people?
I'm giving back what was given to me, which is hope in a hopeless situation, the total absence of hope. And that's what I'm doing. I give I give the opportunity. It's up to the other person as to whether or not they actually take it. But for me, what do I get out of it? It's a satisfaction that that there's a connection, that I'm not by myself. And it's most incredible when I'm talking to or working with somebody, and especially in person, that I get to see the light come on. And that, oh my goodness, I wouldn't miss that for anything.
Beautiful. I was just thinking, like, you don't really look like a Reiki practitioner to me. You don't really have the look. So I think that that's also really cool because it's not one size fits all. You don't have to wear like a white linen shirt and like be in moccasins on the beach or anything. It's for all of us. We all have access to energy and we all have access to healing. And I really love that so much. Something else that I want to ask you about is, how long did it take you to start to be comfortable sharing about your experience?
I tried a couple of times early, and it was so different from anything that I would hear from anybody else. I decided that it wasn't time. Um, Even though it is an experience that I have, there are still some arenas that I do not share that in. What I gave you is raw, that I can't do, and I choose not to do in other places because it's not. It's not. I don't feel like I'm called to do that at the time. Um, but but being comfortable, I guess I joined IANDS probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. So we're talking maybe 28 years into my experience of finding out that there were more people like me that have dark experiences, and that they're not light and go to Jesus and have wonderful experiences. It's not. And I find out through the research and reading a lot of the articles from IANDS, and is that my experience is among the lowest percentage, and it's even lower than that because people won't talk about it. And so I appreciate this opportunity to have a platform to be able to talk about it, because it's not all wonderful life and roses and everything's great and it's all light and you have friends, and it wasn't like that for me. But my experience is my experience, and so that's what I share.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the statistic is something like 2% of all near-death experiences are distressing ones, which is very, very low.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I think and the point of the podcast is that we make extraordinary experiences ordinary experiences by sharing about them bravely and openly. So I really appreciate hearing this other end of the spectrum, because just like you shared, maybe there's people out there who don't want to share about their experience because they feel alone, and then they hear you and they say, okay, if Bryan can share about his experience, I can share about mine. So thank you for your service to this portion of our community and just getting that information out there as well.
Thank
So
you.
you kind of described, this feeling of hell, this feeling of despair, but you said that your day-to-day life now is nothing like that. So what are some of the things that you experience that feel like heaven for you in the day-to-day?
Well, it's like seeing your smiling face. The change came from the inside, and it was nothing necessarily on the outside, especially to start with. And when my spirit woke up, I can tell you that my spirit had gone to sleep. I had succeeded in having a spirit that was asleep, but it woke up in hell. And when it woke up, I'm going to need some help. And it was only a spirit that could get a spirit out of that. And so that touch, that remembering of who God is, and that comforting assurance, the confidence, that all came and it all rushed back. And it's just different. It's the total opposite of running away. I'm running too. I hear people talk about in their near-death experience having, their life flash before their eyes, and um, and remembering the life. I'm given the opportunity to straighten out a lot of that stuff. So my life review is going to be pretty interesting. This will be part of it. I'm excited for that.
That's beautiful. Well, you know what, that actually kind of leads me into the next question that I wanted to ask, which was about, you talked about as the last version of yourself, you caused a lot of harm to other people by your behaviors and what was going on with your life. So I'm wondering, how do you make your amends?
Um, I I have somebody that I talk to before I do anything, like going to talk to somebody and trying to straighten out something that I have done wrong so that I don't cause any more harm. And but I've had the opportunity to talk to people who I was just not I was not a nice person. I was so self-absorbed. It's any wonder that anybody would associate themselves with me, especially at the time. And I've been able to go back to a lot of those. There are some that just haven't worked out, and it's not on me. I've done what I could to amend as best as I could, and I'm still living. It's a daily amends for me to not be the selfish, self-centered person that I was before this experience. And so, this was a turning point. This was yeah, there's a country song that said a dead end street, just a good place to turn around. I'm not going back into that dead end, but yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Thank you for sharing that. What does your family think about you kind of coming out of the spiritual closet and sharing about this stuff?
My wife she's okay with it, I guess. It's still kind of, I think I don't talk to my two boys about it. Um, I tried to briefly talk to them. They were 8 years old when I quit drinking, and so they are in their way. They're still struggling with who I was before I stopped. Um, she seems to be pretty good with it. Sometimes I wonder if what I talk about and what I say might sound like voodoo. It's just how do you relate what's going on in the spirit? So sometimes it just comes out, and that's just how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's very important to share about the fact that not everybody understands us, and that's okay. It's totally okay, because you can have your human experience with people that you relate to in a human way, and you can have your spiritual experience with people that you relate to in a spiritual way. And that's one of the greatest gifts of being a part of IANDS, is that you can go to a conference, you can go to a local group, you can go to one of our sharing groups online, and you can just speak this language, and you don't have to explain yourself or anything like that.
Right.
And it fills some kind of like deep spiritual void to be able to connect in that way. So I think that, I have the same kind of experience where some people in my family don't really understand what I'm talking about. And that's totally okay too, because I do have spiritual family that does understand me. So
Right.
just wanted to point out that distinction. If somebody's listening to this and they're feeling like nobody understands them, we feel that way too
You you
sometimes.
you got to go find them though. You have to go look. We're out there. Oh yeah, we're out there.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's right. That's pretty much the look we get, And so I try to be very conscious about, especially people close to me, trying not going into a deep spiritual place with somebody who, I'm just talking gibberish a lot of times. And so, it doesn't do me or them any good. But IANDS has actually given me, listen, we've been back from our trip, what, 2-3 weeks, and my feet are just now touching the ground. It's IANDS is that's a great outlet, a great place to go to find out, to verify, to confirm an experience like what I had, even a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening. with spreading, pushing the boundary out about what we are in IANDS has actually helped with that, because I mean, you don't have to die to have this experience. People's spirits wake up here on earth, and it's like, oh, what happened?
I love that. Yes, so true. I've really enjoyed this conversation together today. I just want to see if there's anything else that you'd like to share to feel more complete about our time together.
No, I would say thank you for this platform. I would hope that anybody listening to this that finds this, you didn't find this by accident. If you can listen close, if you had a wonderful, life-changing light experience, and it seems that most people who have those they're frustrated about having to come back and live this human part of the life, and that can be a hell in itself. Find somebody to talk to. Don't do this alone. Find somebody. Even if you have resources, Betty, that you can, somebody ask questions and, point. Go to IANDS. Look for that. Start there. Start on your knees, but then, search for IANDS and find a community of people who are like us. And I'll tell you, it changes everything. It gives me my life is valid. And what I've found out is the worst thing that happened in my life is actually my greatest asset. That's what God does.
Well said. And our information will be in the liner notes of this episode. So if you feel like you need connection, you can always reach out to Bryan or myself. And yes, IANDS is a great resource, and those resources will be in the liner notes of this episode as well. So Bryan, thank you so much. So grateful for you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.